Senator Julianne Ortman recently attended a seminar on national security, and she is here to encapsulate what she learned and how it impacts Minnesota. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks
we appreciate
for
it.
having me.
Senator, I want to begin with, when you were invited to attend this seminar, it was in Pennsylvania, you did issue a statement, and it said, "As the mother of a soldier in the U.S. Army, I have a personal interest in better understanding our military and the issues they face at home and abroad." So when you were at the seminar, would you say that you gained more from the perspective of mother, of lawmaker, or American?
Well, all those things, because I don't really separate those parts of my life out. They're all combined. Raymond, my son, is a private first class in the U.S. Army. He is studying Chinese at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, and I'm very proud of him. You could say ridiculously proud of my son. And so when he entered into this great new life, I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. But also in my service in the State Senate and on the Judiciary Committee, national security is of importance to Minnesotans, so I do have that public responsibility too, to know what our federal government is doing and engage in the conversation and the preparation of our military. This week was all about making sure that civilians participate in a conversation with military colonels and lieutenant colonels primarily on what's happening with national security, what's happening with the Army, and engaging in a conversation between civilians and military professionals.
And so based on what you heard, what do you think some of the greatest challenges are right now facing our national security?
Well, first I have to say that I think our nation is in great hands, and there were so many heroes in the room that I worked in. There were about 20 colonels and from different branches of the military and the State Department. There were also professionals from international organizations, like from Kenya. There was one from Poland, one from New Zealand. So they were engaging in a conversation about the military and about national security, and then in the final week engaging civilians, as I said. So I think we talked about sexual harassment in the military, very important. We talked about how the military chooses which countries to engage in, how they monitor what's happening in other countries, and how they study. It's an academic program, so these folks that participate study for an entire year and earn a master's program while they're learning about national security.
What do you think the state's role is, if any, in helping shape national security?
Oh, I think programs like this are very important. I think just being involved. I think that if I called my congressman or a U.S. senator, I believe that they would answer. So I just think being knowledgeable, we're as close to residents and voters as possible, so engaging in a very important dialogue about what our nation's interests are. I think that's the real challenge, is identifying what are national security interests, and that's why this is such a challenging program. One of the interesting things about the military, at least in the Army, is that the captains go to school for tactics, and the majors go to schools for operations. But the colonels go for strategic leadership, and that's what this was about, strategic leadership in making those very difficult decisions.
What about the idea, the thought, it's in the news obviously right now about data privacy, and so nationally, as we're becoming aware of the difficulty of balancing the need for privacy and national security, do you think, as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, when, if at all, is it appropriate for the government to have access to private data?
Well, I think you always have to balance the needs between security and privacy. And obviously Minnesotans and Americans, we want both. And so the national interest and the statewide interest is to see if there is some way we can balance that. But it's a public policy debate, and the general public should be involved in that debate, and they should have an opportunity to be heard. It's one of the things that is concerning for me about what's happening with national security and what has happened recently with the leaks that we've heard about, is this question of when is there transparency, and that transparency itself leads to accountability to the people that we serve. And I wonder if we've struck the right balance. And me personally, I'm not sure that we have.
Was that at all a discussion at the seminar?
It was discussed for sure, and other issues as well. I think the focus was to help these colonels and lieutenant colonels as they go out to places of leadership across the country and across the world to engage in that conversation with public policy leaders, that their relationships with our congressmen and women is very important, and their dialogue with civilian leaders, whether they be state leaders or local leaders, they are not us versus them, it's all of us, it's our country and it's our military, and we need to engage in a more meaningful conversation about what they're doing, and that's what this program was about.
Were there any surprises at the seminar?
I was a little surprised, but pleasantly surprised, that the ACLU was there for a discussion. The concept is really to bring lots of different views into these classrooms so that we can, so that our military folks are well educated about the entire spectrum of views. Whether they agree or disagree, you want them to be able to sort through the views and address and respect all different views.
You mentioned sexual abuse. Do you think Minnesotans can be a little more confident that women will be well respected?
Well, I have to say, one of the most exciting things for me is I had a sponsor. Everyone has a sponsor student, and the student that I worked with was Lieutenant Nikki Olive Griffin, and she was the first woman battalion commander. She was promoted while I was there from lieutenant colonel to colonel, so you'll see some of the pictures. It was fascinating. She's a mother with 2 children, and she's married to a husband who served in the reserves, and she had great insight for me. I would say what she has to say is profound, not only in the fact that she's come up through the ranks to be the first battalion commander, but her mother was a master sergeant. So when you think about the tradition and the understanding of those issues that she was able to share with me. And she said what's really changed is that the military has made it okay, acceptable, and even promoted reporting. That she doesn't believe that there's a more additional incidents, but that there's better reporting. And she's very encouraged by that. And so I would say, taken from someone with real knowledge and years in the military, I take that as very authoritative.
Okay, Senator, you are now charged with helping Americans better understand current national security issues globally and domestically. So what do you think we should all know about what you learned at the seminar?
Well, I would say that's a pretty big charge.
You're up to the task.
We all have a responsibility to keep learning, to keep reading, to not just assume that it's somebody else's problem or somebody else is looking out for our interests, because we are in a nation of self-government. It's what's unique about our country. And so it's your responsibility and mine and everyone watching to keep an eye on government and to make sure that they know what we think and that our standards are being discussed and considered when decisions are being made.
Okay, thank you so much for coming in and talking about your experience. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hope everybody's having a great summer.